Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nerdy Movie News Roundup. This is the show where we round up all the latest news in the world of nerdy movies. So, yeah, we got some interesting stories to talk about today. Not too many, to be honest, so this should be a bit of a shorter show, but in any case, we'll still have fun. Well, why don't we? Let's have fun. First of all, Kumail Nanjiani. He's a guy that hasn't exactly been treated the best when it comes to playing comic book characters. You know, he trained like a madman, trained like a dog for Eternals, and he didn't really do much in that movie, and he hasn't exactly had a promising future. In the MCU. Of course, it seems like Eternals 2 is probably just not going to happen. Who the hell knows if we're ever going to see those characters again? I mean, I imagine we will, but will Kumail be one of them? I don't know. But it seems like he may actually end up playing somebody in the DC world. So let's head over to Cosmic Circus. In other news for DC fans, when I asked about the Booster Gold rumors that week that were circulating, Jolo Maridueña, who, if you don't know, is the kid from Cobra Kai and Blue Beetle, told me that Kumail Nanjiani is indeed cast as Booster Gold. He briefly mentioned his excitement at the prospect of a future team-up between Blue Beetle and Booster Gold in the DCU. This news adds to Nexus Point news exclusive from earlier this month that Nanjiani would be donning the live-action Booster Gold suit in the upcoming DCU film. This news should undoubtedly excite all of the DC fans out there. So, one thing to note about that they mentioned that there's going to be an upcoming Booster Gold film. That's not true. At least James Gunn announced it as a TV series or like a streaming show on Max. Now, maybe it's transitioned into a film and that's just an update that I've missed, but I just wanted to point that out. So yeah, it is interesting. So Cosmic Circus is saying that Jolo Maridueña directly told them that Kumail has been cast as Booster Gold. I mean, I can't imagine that they would just straight up lie about a quote like that, right? Like, they want to do that, right? Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of these websites will just make up rumors and whatnot, but like, I feel like it's like another step out of the bounds of what's appropriate, we'll say, to just straight up make up a quote like that. So I'm just gonna assume that they're telling the truth there, and that yes, Jolo probably did say this to them. And the thing is that yeah, he would know, right? Because like Booster Gold, from what I understand, again, I'm not too familiar with the character, but from what I understand in the comics, he teams up with Blue Beetle a lot. So presumably they're going to want him and Jolo, whoever plays Booster Gold, him and Jolo to team up at some point, right? So it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. Now, as far as Booster Gold himself goes, I'm not too familiar with the character, so I'm not necessarily going to be the authority on whether or not Kumail is the best pick for the character, but based on what I understand, Booster Gold is he's like this guy who time travels from the future to present day, and he's kind of a loser from the future. That's how James Gunn described him, and he uses like future technology to be a superhero in the present day, and he's kind of like a Star-Lord-esque character where he thinks he's a lot cooler than he actually is. So he seems like a fun character, and based on that premise, I mean, I think Kumail is like a good pick for that. I think it's definitely going to be a comedic series, and Kumail is obviously has experience with that. So yeah, I mean, I'm into this casting. I'd be interested to see if diehard Booster Gold fans are like hardcore against it. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, Robert Downey Jr. Last week, we reported that Robert is going to be playing Doctor Doom, as confusing and baffling as that may sound. Now, after like the week, a week of reflecting on this news, I think I've settled on the idea that, people are like fighting over whether or not this is like a desperation action here, or if no, there's actually a lot of potential here. And I think I've settled on the conclusion that I think that this is both. Like, I think that this is an act of desperation, right? Like, this wasn't the plan all along. Obviously, the original plan was for the multiverse saga to center around Kang as the main villain, and that's obviously not where they're going anymore. Or I should say, at the same time, even if you hate this casting, I don't think that you can deny that there is potential in the idea of like a Tony Stark variant being the big bad of the multiverse saga. I mean, you know, like you could absolutely tell an interesting story of like a Tony Stark variant that failed to save his world or universe or whatever, it being like grief stricken and vowing to, you know, protect all of the multiverse, and that, you know, ending up being more of like a villainous thing than a heroic thing, similarly to how Tony Stark built Ultron and created a villain, like something similar to that, where Tony Stark just is a villain in some sense because he wants control or something like that. I mean, I think you'd be dishonest if you didn't at least acknowledge that there is potential to that story. Is it comic accurate? Well, obviously not. But the MCU has been not comic accurate a ton in the past. You know, I'm not as familiar with these comic books, but one of the things that I've heard is that, you know, stuff like Civil War was nothing like Civil War in the comic books, right? The Infinity War, I mean, I don't think that that's like a direct adaptation of, you know, the Infinity War of the comic books. Neither was Age of Ultron. That was not a faithful adaptation from what I understand of the Age of Ultron comic run. So, like, the MCU is constantly doing things differently from the comics. So I feel like to like now be like, oh, you're being not comic accurate is like, okay. I mean, it's fine. That's a fine criticism, but I feel like we're past that point when it comes to the MCU. And I also understand that there are a lot of people that are like, oh, well, you're whitewashing or whatever. You need to get a Romani actor. And it's like, I get it. I get that perspective, but it's also just like, they have the potential to put like Robert Downey Jr., which is going to get a bunch of buzz in the movie. I mean, I don't know that I can really hate on them too much. And again, this isn't necessarily, maybe this version of, or well, okay, hold on. That actually leads into another thing that I wanted to address. So people are saying that this definitely isn't going to be a Tony Stark variant because Doctor Doom, or because when he was announced, one of the directors was like, and introducing Victor Von Doom or whatever. And to be fair, that doesn't necessarily mean that he won't, like, he might be called Victor Von Doom, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he won't also be a Tony Stark variant. We've seen, like in Loki, for example, like there's Loki, and then one of his variants is a woman named Sylvie. Like, the idea that Victor Von Doom couldn't be a variant of Tony Stark, that's absolutely possible. So we don't necessarily know exactly which direction they go. I will say, if they literally just make him like Victor Von Doom and he's not a variant of Tony Stark, then I would agree that that is absolutely weird stunt casting. But if they actually have a plan to use Robert Downey Jr. and use the fact that he is a variant of Tony Stark in an interesting way, then I think that goes beyond stunt casting and might actually be a smart move. But in any case, the story that we're actually talking about today is, I just wanted to give my like refreshed thoughts on the situation. Is the pay. Because, Marvel's spending a lot on this movie, aren't they? So this is coming from Variety. Sources say Marvel is plunking down $80 million for Anthony and Joe Russo to direct Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, and significantly more for Downey to tackle uber villain Doctor Doom in the two tentpoles. Sources say Downey, who is repped by WME, agreed to return to the MCU if the Russos, who are CAA clients, would be directing. They were the only ones he would work with, says a source familiar with the deal making. So this is very interesting because I remember like a few months ago, we reported that Marvel met with the Russo brothers, and actually, at least this is what the report claimed, was that Marvel actually didn't want the Russo brothers back. And one of the reasons that they cited was that they were actually looking to not spend as much on the next two Avengers films. And the Russo brothers have a history of overspending on their movies. Like not just Avengers stuff, but also like stuff that they make with Netflix, like The Gray Man or whatever, which is horrible. It's like the one. The Russo brothers haven't exactly had the best career post Endgame. And it's interesting that they've seemingly pivoted away from that because now they have Robert Downey Jr. in, who is costing them, it seems to be $100 million per film, which is crazy, right? And the Russo brothers, which they're going to cost $80 million per film. So we have movies that, before you factor in the production budget, before you factor in the salaries of all the other actors, before you factor in the marketing, right? Before you factor in all the other costs that come with making a movie, this movie already has a budget of $180 million. When all is said and done, these movies are potentially going to end up costing like $500 million probably. And I think that this just speaks to this, like one of the biggest problems that Hollywood has right now, which is that these movie budgets are just getting so bloated. And it's also a problem that I think they're having right now where I think they're severely overestimating how much these movies are going to end up making because yes, Avengers Endgame is like the second highest grossing movie of all time. Yes, Avatar passed it during a re-release, whatever, who cares? But like that was after a decade of buildup. That was after an Avengers Infinity War, which set the hype even higher. You're making a movie with, again, I'm assuming is going to sit around $500 million. Why are you just assuming that this is going to be Avengers Endgame again? Because it's not. I'm just saying, I'm just being real. There's no way that in between now where we're getting Captain America, Brave New World, we're getting Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, maybe Blade? That's a massive maybe Blade if that doesn't get delayed again, which it definitely will. But and yes, I understand we're riding off a big high with Deadpool and Wolverine, but the reality is that Deadpool and Wolverine actually has little to do with the rest of the MCU, and I don't know. I don't know exactly how much the hype of Deadpool and Wolverine is gonna lead into Captain America: Brave New World. I could be wrong, but you have these next 4 movies which have to build up to Avengers Doomsday. With these 4 movies, I don't think we're going to get back to Endgame levels of hype. I don't think that that's possible. And they're just operating with these budgets. They're operating with these salaries just as if that were the case. And that does seem irresponsible. Now, at the end of the day, will Robert Downey Jr. get butts and seats? I mean, yeah, right? Like I do think that the announcement, whether you like it or not, it caused a lot of hype. I mean, it did. So, I mean, maybe at the end of the day it ends up being worth it, but I don't know. I don't know, man. I mean, listen, if they genuinely, like I mentioned before, if they genuinely have an idea for a Tony Stark variant being Doctor Doom, then you know what? Go for it, I guess. But if this is just Doctor Doom and it just has nothing to do with Tony Stark and you're just casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom as this weird stunt casting, at that point, I don't think that it's worth it. I think that the cost is just too much. Because again, remember, you have to make the rest of the movie still. And you've already spent $180 million. And again, I'm assuming that it's $100 million. It could be more. It could be. So I don't know, man. This is we'll see. We'll see. I could be wrong, but I don't think that they can run around and assume just assume that they're gonna have Avengers Infinity War and Endgame level hype around Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, because I just don't know that that's gonna be the case. But what do I know? Not much to be fair. All right, next up, let's talk about Bucky. He's a character in the MCU. Everybody loves Bucky. Sebastian Stan, very handsome man. He's a character that has gone through a lot of hardship, right? Every time we see him, been a little samey, you know. It's like, oh, I'm struggling with my PTSD or whatever, and oh, I'm messed up in the head. Oh, but apparently in Thunderbolts, he's gonna be very unique and different than how we've seen him before. So it's coming from comicbook.com. Speaking of comic book at San Diego Comic-Con, Thunderbolts star Sebastian Stan and Wyatt Russell responded to questions based on the film footage shown to the Hall H crowd. When asked about Bucky using his dishwasher to clean his vibranium arm, Stan joked that it's efficient. One has to at some point make sure that things do get clean, and so that's a very efficient way of doing it fast, Stan joked. He uses a lot less water too. A lot less water in the dishwasher. None of that is important. I don't even know why I included it here. But Russell chimed in briefly after that, sharing something notable. He's a congressman, Russell responded. So, Wyatt Russell, who, if you don't know, played John Walker, Walmart Captain America, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He's also going to be in Thunderbolts, starring with Sebastian Stan. Wyatt Russell is saying that Bucky is apparently going to be a congressman. Which is kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. Like, you're telling me that Bucky got voted into Congress? Would the citizens of the MCU vote? And I understand that he was mind controlled. I understand this. But would the citizens of the MCU vote in the guy who tried to assassinate the king of Wakanda? I mean, he's obviously redeemed himself, right? And I'm sure like the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was definitely some pretty good PR for the Winter Soldier. But would that really happen? I don't know that it would. I don't know that I buy that the people of the MCU would just vote in Bucky. I mean, we'll see how it's handled, but that is interesting. And at the end of the day, I mean, I can get over that if you're doing something interesting with having Bucky be a congressman. Like, I don't know if he's like advocating for like superheroes or something. That could be interesting in government. Maybe that at some point leads into like mutants and stuff like that. Obviously, we're kind of getting there with vibranium being in Captain America: Brave New World. I mean, I don't. Who knows? Maybe these two movies end up touching on mutants and whatnot. But yeah, we'll see how it's handled. I definitely think there's potential for interesting stories to be there, but I also don't know if I buy it. All right, next up, Superman. This is a movie that I am getting more and more excited about. You know, Superman's not a character that I have too much nostalgia for. Like, you know, as a kid, I watched a few episodes of like the Superman animated series here and there. I watched like Justice League and stuff like that. But I was mainly familiar with the character because of like the DCEU. That's like the first piece of Superman media that I like really intently watched and consumed. And I like Man of Steel, by the way, but it's not exactly like, your traditional Superman thing. So it's not necessarily, it might not be the best thing for you to watch first when it comes to Superman, right? And then I think I watched like Smallville, and it's like, again, it's like, I liked Smallville, and I only watched like the first few seasons, by the way. I know at some point they get to like Metropolis or something, and he meets Lois Lane. I never even got there. So it's like, again, it's like, I like Smallville, but is that really a Superman thing? Like, it's really more of a Clark Kent show. And then I watched Superman and Lois. And it's just like, again, it's great. I love the show, but it's like a post Superman thing where he's no longer in Metropolis. He's like back in Smallville. So it wasn't really until My Adventures with Superman that I really watched like a true like real accurate iteration of what Superman is like supposed to be, where he has chemistry with Lois Lane, where Jimmy Olsen is alive. and I absolutely love the show. So it's like, ever since I watched My Adventures with Superman, and especially now that season 2 has wrapped up, I've become I've just become a massive fan of Superman as a character, and I totally see the vision for what James Gunn can do with this, and I am just very excited to see what he does. And yeah, now we have Superman is done filming. So James Gunn had this to say. And that's a wrap. God bless our cast and crew whose commitment, creativity, and hard work have brought this project to life. I set out to make a movie about a good man in a world that isn't always so much. And the goodness and kindness and love I've encountered on a daily basis on the set has inspired me and thrust me forward when I felt too spent to move on my own. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. It has been an honor. The destination has been Superman, but the journey has been the toil and laughter and the emotions and ideas and magic we've shared together on set. For that, I am forever grateful. Frodo from our first week of shooting in Svalbard, Norway. All right, so a couple things I want to touch on here. Now, this isn't not to make this about a Marvel versus DC thing, but both Superman and Fantastic Four are supposed to be coming out in July of 2025. To be fair, Superman is coming out earlier in July, and Fantastic Four is coming out at the end of July. 2 weeks apart from each other. Fantastic Four began filming this week. Superman ended filming. What does that tell us about James Gunn's approach to filmmaking versus Marvel Studios, versus Kevin Feige? I can't help but have more faith in the DCU at this point, because James Gunn has expressed like just basic, obvious filmmaking techniques that Marvel doesn't really abide by. It's kind of baffling that they don't abide by it. And I just can't help but feel more optimistic about it. Like, James Gunn has openly said that they are never going to go in production on a movie until a script is finished. And at the same time, we've heard so many horror stories about like Marvel movies filming and the third act is still being written while they're filming the movie. The fact that now we're here and Superman is like a year from release, and it's going to have like an entire year in post-production. I mean, how can you not feel happy about that? How can you not feel somewhat optimistic about that? I mean, who knows? The movie might end up being terrible, and Fantastic Four might end up being fantastic. I didn't even, not pun not intended. That's still very much possible, but yeah, I mean, I can't help but feel, I can't help but find it promising when it comes to Superman and the DCU in general. So we'll see. Let me know, what are your thoughts on Superman versus Fantastic Four and the ideas that I've presented here? Let me know in the comments down below. Hey guys, so full disclosure, so I had to go greet some people, and we ended up going out to dinner. So I'm back to finish the recording of this video like 2 hours later. But anyways, what I was saying was that Skeleton Crew is coming out after Star Wars The Acolyte. And what that means is that this show's not exactly coming in at the best time for the Star Wars fandom and for the reception of Star Wars. And yeah, so I feel like this show, it's an unfortunate case for it because it definitely doesn't seem to be like the Star Wars show that is really set up to like quote unquote save Star Wars. You know, I think at this point, like a show that's going to save Star Wars is probably one that takes itself like super seriously and that, is as good as Andor and that maybe involves the Jedi and, if you want to appease the fans or whatever, or at least the vocal fans, maybe have paint the Jedi in a good light or something. I don't know. But Star Wars: The Skeleton Crew, it seems to be about a bunch of kids and they're going on a little adventure and it's supposed to be like the Goonies. And that's something that, I'm kind of interested in, but is that what Star Wars fans are necessarily looking for at the moment? I don't really think so. So I kind of feel bad for it, but hopefully it comes out good. Anyways, we have some more images from it, so let's take a look at them. Actually, let's read this first. Sorry. It's coming from people. Star Wars Skeleton Crew will premiere December 3rd on Disney+. I believe this is the first time we have a date for it, right? I think so. Anyways, it's coming out on December 3rd. When 4 kids make a mysterious journey on their seemingly safe home planet, they get lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. According to the show's official synopsis, finding their way home and meeting unlikely allies and enemies will be a greater adventure than they ever imagined. So, you got this picture here. You got Jude Law with a bunch of kids, and I think the show is really going to be centered around the kids. So I'm actually not sure how much exactly Jude Law is going to be in it. But you got like the kid on the left. That's a kid. It just looks like a normal kid. But then the kid on the right just looks like a normal kid. But in the middle, you have this like girl that has like these weird space sci-fi glasses or whatever. And then you have a little elephant guy. Look at him. He's so cute. I like him. We got this other picture here. Looks like they're working on a droid or something. It's kind of what it looks like. Looks like they're going to be on like speeder bikes at some point in the show. So isn't that fun? And then this looks very like Stranger Things here, where they have their little speeder bikes. And, this feels a lot like, the Stranger Things kids riding their bikes around town. So, it definitely feels like it's going for that sort of tone. And I don't know. I think this looks cute. It is one of those things where Star Wars shows are just unfortunately more consistently misses than hits for me. And I mean, to be fair, I don't even hate a lot of them. Like, I like The Acolyte. Like, I think it's like a 6 out of 10. But I still consider that a miss because it needs to be better than that, for it to be a hit. And yeah, that's unfortunately how most of these Star Wars shows are just consistently being, because at least for the past 3 Star Wars shows, all right, The Mandalorian season 3, Ahsoka, and The Acolyte. I mean, those are consistent misses at least, right? So it's just one of those things where you can't get too hopeful for a Star Wars project at this point. It is very much I'll believe it when I see it, as far as another Andor coming out. So we'll see. Hopefully this ends up being a nice surprise, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. All right, next up. Karate Kid, obviously, classic franchise, has spawned off into a mega hit Netflix series, Cobra Kai. And I gotta say, I really like Cobra Kai. I think that it's a little long in the tooth at this point. Like, I'm watching this latest season, right? And I like it, don't get me wrong. And it definitely gets better as it goes along. I think I got reinvested in the characters. But, like, it is very, like, I'm glad this is the final season. I'll say that, right? Where I'm like, I feel like you can't really stretch this out much longer. But, obviously, even throughout Cobra Kai, Mr. Miyagi is always a massive part of the show. And it looks like they're doing a little bit of a Mr. Miyagi spinoff. It's coming from the Hollywood Reporter. This is an interview with like the producers. So this is the interviewer talking. Oh, it sounds like we're talking about a Mr. Miyagi prequel here. And then one of the producers says, I would say that we definitely want to do that and have been talking about that. But the focus has been on Cobra Kai. As we're finishing that up, we'll see exactly what path we take in terms of spin-offs, but it is definitely something that we've been wanting to do. It's just that we wanted to wait until we get finished with Cobra Kai first before we get into that. So, minor spoilers for Cobra Kai Season 6. It does get revealed that Mr. Miyagi may have had a bit of a dark past. That he may not have always been the, like, super, like, morally upstanding person, that he may have done shady things in the past. So it's interesting. Well, like, we'll see how much further they explore that throughout this season. But it does seem like that might be setting up a prequel series. And is that something that I really want? I don't know. I don't really know. The Cobra Kai showrunners at this point, I mean, they are just like very respectful of the source material. They clearly have a lot of respect for the lore and the series and whatnot. So like, I have to imagine that if they want to do it, they probably have a good idea. But is that necessarily something that I need? Do I need Mr. Miyagi's past explored? I mean, I will say, like, they've done good stuff with like John Kreese and exploring his past, right? And they cast a young John Kreese, and they cast it very well, by the way. The actor that they have is really great. So I'd be open for it. I don't know that I necessarily need it. I don't yearn for it, but I'd be open to it. Let me know what you think. All right. Last story of the day. Batman Caped Crusader is out now. So Batman Caped Crusader, if you don't know, it is the latest Batman animated series. It is, I believe it's executive produced by Bruce Timm, who was one of the main co-creators of Batman the Animated Series. And it is set in the 1940s, I believe. Yeah, I just double checked. It's set in the 1940s, and yeah, it is very much like in the vein of Batman the Animated Series, but it's also very unique and very much its own thing. And so I've seen like 5 episodes of it. They put out the entire season, which I don't think is the best idea. Again, I am all for like weekly episodic releases. Like, put out like 2 or 3 episodes at first, but like I feel like just doing weekly releases just builds up the hype for the show. I don't know, but also whatever. I also like binging, so it's fine. But yeah, I've seen 5 episodes of it. It's all out. I'll finish it probably after I record this video and then post up my review at some point. By the time you watch this, I'll probably have my review up. But yeah, I've seen 5 episodes, and I really like it. It's set in the 1940s, and because of that, Batman is not, like, he doesn't have as many gadgets as he traditionally does in more modern Batman media, so it's like he's doing, like, really just boots on the ground, like, detective work, and they really lean into that, which is super cool. And yeah, like, as far as gadgets, I think he has a grappling hook. He also has smoke bombs. I don't know have they shown him with anything else explicitly? I don't think they have, actually. So yeah, it's really cool because it's like a much more grounded Batman than we often see nowadays. And so I really like that aspect of it. And yeah, being in the 1940s, I really love that the tone, the atmosphere of this Gotham. I like that everybody's talking with a 1940s accent. See? That's really cool. It's not Kevin Conroy doing the voice, but the guy that they have, he has a great Batman voice. He really does, especially when he's talking about like clues and doing detective work. That I feel like especially there it shines. I also really like how they're kind of leaning into like the Matt Reeves Batman, where he's very much like like Batman is who the character is, and Bruce Wayne is like the mask that he puts on to hide his identity. That's very much the angle that they're going at here. In fact, there's a moment in episode 1 where he's going to a party, and you like see in real time the transition from Batman to Bruce Wayne. And the way that they play it, it's kind of horrifying. like he steps into like the party, and he like does this creepy ass smile. But it's good. It's cool. I really like the way that they're handling it, and they definitely are going into like the psychology of Batman. And actually like a pretty interesting way. I won't spoil exactly how they do it, but yeah, I'm really digging it. Now, the big, a warning, I guess I will give people. Listen, if you are somebody that often describes the media that you watch as woke, if you are somebody that goes on impassioned rants about DEI, you may get big mad, as the kids say, while you watch this show. Because they make a lot of changes, like the Penguin is like a woman in this. I don't think she's a trans woman or anything like that. I think she's just a woman in this. Harley Quinn, she just kind of is Harley Quinn in this. Like, she, as far as we can tell, she wasn't. I mean, I guess we don't actually see her origin, to be fair, but it appears to be the case that she hasn't met the Joker yet, but she just becomes Harley Quinn, and she's like he's kind of just a different villain altogether in this, the way that it's executed. What else? They do some race swaps, right? Like Jim Gordon and Barbara are black or whatever. I think that's it. And listen, this is my perspective, right? You can have your perspective. I don't care. I don't really care about stuff like that. Like, the only question I concern myself with is it good? is the writing good? Is the voice acting good? Is the animation good? The answer to all those is yes. So I don't care if it's woke or if they made changes because of DEI policies or whatever. Like, I honestly just don't care. As long as the thing that I'm watching is good, go for it. Put in whatever propaganda you want. I don't really care. So that's my perspective on it. And I will say, honestly, I believe that it is also like earnest artistic intent. 'Cause like, I completely understand like Bruce Timm being like, yeah, I don't want to do the same thing over again. If I'm going to do another Batman show, I want to make it like radically different from what I did before. So I personally don't mind. And I'll say this as well, like, all of the changes just lead to interesting stories, because like, if you look at Oswalda, as she's called in the show, she's a woman, and they give her 2 children. And minor spoiler, but like, she does kind of end up abusing her children, and I feel like the fact that she's a mother makes it more scary, right? Like, maybe this is sexist of me or whatever, but I do think that a mother being cruel to her children is inherently more scary or unsettling to me than like a father. Just because, like, I don't know, I just feel like a mother is supposed to just like always be there for you, Like, the idea that my mom would ever like not love me or whatever, like abuse me in some way, that's terrifying. So it's like like in that situation, I do feel like making Penguin like a woman is just like an interesting creative choice. And then you have like Harley Quinn. Again, I don't want to spoil anything about her actually, but like, when you actually get into what they do with her, she's an interesting character. I mean, she just is. Sorry. And then like, yeah, like Batman and Barbara, they're also cool characters. I just like the fact that they're black doesn't. I just don't care. So that's my perspective on all of that, but I could see people going in, watching it, coming out and being like, woke, whoa, woke, whoa, woke, 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 woke. I can see that happening. So we'll see. I don't know what the reception necessarily is going to be, but yeah, I'll also say this, like, it is very, it takes itself, well, not that Batman the Animated Series didn't take itself seriously, but, like, it's very mature. It's not, like, quite, like, TVMA or anything like that, but, like, the villains in this are, like, pretty evil, and, like, they do bad things, and it's not like hidden. It's not like alluded to. Like there's dark stuff that happens in this. So I don't know. Like, could a kid watch it? I mean, obviously it's up to the parent, but like it's not as like kid friendly, I would say, as the animated series. Although not to downplay the animated series, because the animated series got dark for sure as well. But this is definitely a bit more explicit in the darkness and such. So yeah, I would definitely, I really like it. Is it as good or better as the animated series? Here's the thing. I've never actually, like, as an adult, sat down and just watched Batman the Animated Series. I definitely watched it as a kid. But even as a kid, I never, like, sat down and just watched it all, right? I always just caught episodes that were airing. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I'm really qualified to say that if it's as good as Batman the Animated Series. I will say, I do still think that as far as like animated series that are coming out right now, I probably would say that it's not quite as good as X-Men 97 or even Invincible Season 2. I would say it's not quite as good as those shows. But I'm also only halfway through, so yeah, we'll see. Either way, I really like it. I think it's great. I would say that if you're sensitive to things not being quite as comic accurate, then you may just be triggered watching it. But if you just want to watch a good show and you're not sensitive to that type of thing, then I definitely recommend it. So let me know what you think if you've seen it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.